We have a question online. Dawn, if you're still with us.
Sure, thank you, Ms. Albanese. Dawn Clancy with IPS News. I wanted to ask you about one of the recommendations that you make in your report regarding putting some sort of peace force on the ground in Gaza, but I do think you say throughout the occupied Palestinian territory. I wanted to see if you could expand a little bit on what you think that would look like. And then I also wanted to ask you, how would you address the concern that if you put some sort of peace operation, whether it's a force or whatever you want to call it, if you put that on the ground in occupied Palestinian territory, you leave the door, and it's something that's mandated by the UN, it's led by the UN, you leave the door open for some misinterpretation that the UN could be possibly, fighting Israel or squaring up to Israel instead of it, being some sort of peace effort. And I was just wondering how you would respond to that. Thank you.
I think that on this question, we should really consult those who have greater experience than I do with peacekeeping operations, because I'm sure that these are concerns that have been raised in other contexts as well. Israel has no right to be in the occupied Palestinian territory, no right whatsoever. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to withdraw unconditionally and totally, as rapidly as possible, its military presence, dismantling the colonies, stopping the seizing the exploitation of natural resources on the occupied Palestinian territory, and making also reparations. Now, how is it going to happen? So having like what I call protective presence, and they've intentionally been fluid and or ambiguous, if you want, on this one. I've not been very prescriptive, because I don't want that the prescriptiveness of my ideas, on the one hand, infringe on the will of the parties, particularly the Palestinians, because the Palestinians are the one who need to make this request at this stage. There is no say for Israel. But this would also make sure that there is protection for both Palestinians and Israelis while the Israelis withdraw the occupation, so that there is like a buffer. This is as a minimum. But also because there is a urgent need to take the Israeli troops out of Gaza, first and foremost, and in Gaza, the civil order has collapsed because all possible Hamas, the de facto authority-related administration officers have been hit, clan structures, and etc. And so there is a need to have, I think, a transitory force, a transitory presence which ensures capacity to reestablish law and order, but with a very limited time, because it's time for the Palestinians to determine themselves, but it's going to be very, very hard. The longer the Israeli army remains in Gaza and the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory, the worse is going to be both for the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Can I get one more?
Sure, Dawn, go ahead.
Sorry. I also wanted to ask you about the polio campaign. As I'm sure you know, there's a successful first round of the polio campaign. The second round has been paused because of the fighting or whatever else is happening in the north of Gaza. And I've seen a lot on social media where, entities, especially like COGAT, will say, how can we be committing genocide when we are helping distribute, polio vaccines? We're saving children. And I get that, a vaccine against polio isn't going to vaccine a child against a bomb or a bullet or anything else. I'm just wondering how that fits into the context of genocide, or what would you say to that?
I think that this confirms my sense that there is a general misunderstanding of what genocide is and what genocidal intent is. I've said in my first report that Israel was not necessarily denying to have committed, that the facts I was referring to in the report had occurred, like the bombing and the killing of Palestinians on the ground. It has qualified them differently, and I've said this is humanitarian camouflage. Israel uses categories of international law like humanitarian zone and collateral damages or human shields to justify and to make an excuse that distract from the intent to destroy. The intent to destroy a people is the determination to reduce the capacity of a group to survive till leading to destruction. And the intent means that having the intent means that you don't even need to have the completion of the design, of the genocidal design, is what you do to the people. And frankly, there has been so much pressure on Israel to allow humanitarian aid. So according to this reasoning, so even the fact that during the starvation campaign that has led many to die and to get sick because of the lack of food and lack of water, and I've seen some of them, including children. So the fact that every now and then the starvation campaign was interrupted by some trucks allowed in, so Israel is not really starving the Palestinians. I've seen that the vaccination, the polio vaccination campaign, when it started, it was also attacked, it had to be interrupted. How did we get there? Is it a small act of basic humanity going to hide, obscure, and mute what has been done for the past 12 months? I believe it's not. I mean, it might be considered as an exception, but it doesn't change the overall course of Israel's assault on Gaza.